Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I am here with Megan Holder, and we are going to be playing with her perspective. So, as always, I'm going to ask my guest to introduce herself and I'll let you take it away.
Hi, thank you, Ryan. My name is Megan Holder. I'm a licensed professional counselor in the state of South Carolina. I was a school counselor for several years. I left the school system when COVID happened because I also had my first child.
Oh, okay.
And so my I'm like a part-time therapist in private practice
Okay.
in the lovely town of Gaffney, South Carolina. Um, it's the town with the big peach. I don't
Okay.
know if anybody ever seen, oh gosh, what TV show was it? Where
I'm
the
not a
Gaffney
TV
peach
person.
was featured in the intro. So like a lot of people, that's how they recognize Gaffney, South Carolina. Um, so I have been there the entirety of my therapy career. Um, but the biggest things for me are being a wife and a mom. And so I spend most of my time at home. I have three small
All
children
right.
and am very heavily invested in family life. And so a big part of my practice is parenting
Okay.
and children. And and then what now I'm doing it in the process of raising my own family and having my own children.
It's a very cool experience that I have two kids myself, and it is a very being a therapist and getting to watch actual children of your own develop puts a
Mm,
whole new spin on all of the developmental theories that you learn. Because it's like,
yes.
oh, I can see that thing that I read about that was kind of weird and abstract, and I'm like watching
Mhm.
my child go through this process. It's super cool.
And we're going to be talking about Alfred Adler
Yes, yes,
and
yes.
Adlerian therapy today. And that has been really interesting for me because I was introduced to the world of Adler when I only had one child, and
Okay.
now I have three children. And
Mm.
so I get to see this lovely, beautiful three sibling dynamic as these kids grow up together. And it's very Alfred Adler that your siblings actually have more impact on your personality development than your parents. And that's where he very much deviated from Freud, is was the significance of a sibling relationship.
Well, why don't we just start there? Because this is for the audience. This is how Megan and I got introduced. Is that was reading a book called The Courage to Be Disliked, and I was really just jazzed about Alfred Adler's ideas. I thought it was really interesting. You know, the idea that he kind of flipped the idea of trauma on his head and said trauma doesn't exist essentially, and that this is a tool that we utilize actually in our lives as opposed to a thing that has happened to us. And a lot of these ideas I found to be absolutely fascinating. So, but this is one that I think I probably have the least grasp on is the sibling dynamic. So, if there's something that you interesting on your mind, I would love to just hear your kind of thoughts on this.
Oh, on the sibling dynamic?
Yeah.
And so when a lot of people hear the name Alfred Adler, they immediately are like, oh, that's the birth order guy.
Mm.
And it's really easy to jump in and make generalizations about oldest children, middle children, youngest children. And that is not what Alfred Adler was looking at or doing at all. So that it was not, if you come away believing that or thinking that, you've kind of entirely missed the point. What Alfred Adler was aiming for, I think the next book you've ordered was The Individual Psychology of Alfred Adler. And so from an Adlerian perspective, everything is focused on the client or the patient as an individual. And part of how we develop as an individual is we all develop in families. Um, and our family shapes our individual psychology. And birth order can play a role in that, but it's not just birth order that shapes your individual psychology. It's your relational differences and the relational context in which your unique individual family has developed with your siblings. And
Yeah.
so,
Well, and I was just
oh,
gonna,
you have a question.
I was gonna pause on one thing just so the, uh, one of the things that is different about Adler that was fascinating to me, then we can get back to this idea, was that we are the ones that create the meaning. So I think people get a lot of these misconceptions of like, oh, you were a middle child and that in itself has meaning. And Adler was like, no, 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 no. It's a thing that happened and that middle child created meaning out of that situation. And that could go 100 different directions. but it is a unique experience for that child of what is it like to have one above you and one below you. And there may be typical presentations, but that is not like a hard and fast rule that a middle child is always going to be one way or another.
Yeah, that is exactly it. And because what it means to be a middle child is not the same in every family.
Mhm.
And then you add in, like, it's not just birth order, but it's birth order and it's gender differences and it's what the family system values and how much each of those children align with what that family system may or may not value. Say you have a very artistic family, they may very highly prize a artistic middle child, or the opposite may be true. You have a not very artistic family, and then you have a very artistic middle child, and they may feel undervalued in the family system. So it's birth order, it's gender, it's what the family values. And I am learning and I am seeing in my own family, it's also expectations that not only parents, but family members can project onto the children.
Mhm.
And children will make their own meaning of what that means. So one of the Adlerian phrases that kind of sticks out as we talk about this is children are excellent observers of the world around them. They are. Kids are great at that. They pick up on things, they notice everything. It's a child's job to be an excellent observer of the world around them. But they are not always the best interpreters. And so children can observe a thing, and then every child in their own individual head with their own individual personality is going to come up with their, it's an Adlerian terms, it's internal logic.
Mhm.
And so we all have this internal logic that we develop as children, and it can be flawed. And some internal logic might be more rational than others. And it really just depends on each individual child how that internal logic is going to play out in throughout their life.
Is internal logic, is that his term? I'm
I
just
don't know.
curious.
I don't know if it's his turn. Oh, that's a hard one.
Well,
So part of
the reason
part
I'm
of
asking is I actually, so one of the reasons I loved this book was it like put together a bunch of things that I had noticed but didn't have the language to articulate. So like I would often describe to people in my job as a therapist that I had never met someone whose internal logic I understood, whose behavior didn't make sense to me. Their behavior always makes sense to you if you understand the internal logic of someone. And in
Mhm,
Adler's book, the phrase that he used in this book was to describe it as their style of life. And the idea behind this was that essentially from 0 to 5, all those things you had just mentioned, siblings, parents, ideals, family, and all this stuff, it gives you a way of dealing with life essentially. And that
mhm,
runs throughout your entire life is the idea behind this, and it can be mistaken. Essentially, the word I love his language. One of the things I love about this book is the language that he uses. It's so simple, but like right is the I just like mistaken is the perfect word because there's no judgment there. There's
mhm,
no, it's just, oh, you're kind of mistaken that. And one of the ideas that he had is another word I love is pampered child. I just think it's a silly way of describing it. But that a child that feels like their style of life that they had developed was that, hey, I feel like things should be done for me, and I need to act in accordance to get other people to do things for me. And that is what I have, how I have figured out how to navigate my life. Not their fault, just like due to their life circumstances. And it's fascinating to see how this kind of plays out.
yeah, and so if a lot of things that an Adlerian therapist would do, in a therapy session is often called a lifestyle investigation.
Mhm.
And like that becomes like the whole process of like the Adlerian lifestyle investigation. Adler thought there were 5 windows. The first one being early childhood memories, dreams and daydreams would be another. Your family constellation would be a third. There's also something called exogenous factors, which are the things that happen to you that you could never plan for or
Mm.
prepare for or expect to happen. Those life throws you a curveball.
Okay.
Um, and then your how you see yourself and how you view the world around you.
Mhm.
And so those would be the 5 windows of like a lifestyle investigation. And once you kind of figure out what somebody's style of life or lifestyle or their approach to life, you will almost always understand the behavior and the personality developed underneath it. And then it just makes so much sense. And then working with a client, you decide, okay, does this lifestyle make sense? How functional is it for you? You everybody's beliefs are mistaken to some degree,
Mhm.
because lots of things in life are perception. And do you want to keep this perception, or do you like take it or leave it? And that becomes the process of therapy of like, what do you like about your lifestyle? What would you like to keep doing? What are your strengths? And then what are some mistakes that you maybe made in childhood that you could relearn in adulthood? Because you can always rewrite the meaning. And that's a concept that you see in a lot of therapy. In
Mhm.
fact, like the Greek philosopher Epictetus, he said that humans aren't disturbed by the events that happened to them. They're disturbed by their response to the events. And so, and that's like an underlying foundational concept to Albert Ellis and REBT and some cognitive behavioral therapies. And that's very much the Adlerian view, is that something happens, you'll observe it, you'll make meaning from it.
Mhm.
And then based off of that meaning, that's how you will live out the rest of your life.
And so I wanted to take maybe one of those examples that you talked about, and just to highlight for people like maybe how we see this like in sessions with people. 'Cause the one
Mhm.
that always has been stuck out to me is it's seeing the way you see the world, and seeing the world as like as if there are enemies out there, or as
Mm,
if there are potential like friends and allies that you can cooperate with. And if you can imagine that if you had that first one, and so you probably meet many people in this world that view it outside as dangerous. People are dangerous, and they're kind of it's a risky endeavor to get to know someone or be vulnerable. Well, you think if you really think that's true, you're going to interact with the world totally differently than that other person over here who sees, oh, here's a potential new friend over here that could benefit. We could maybe create a win-win situation. Good things could happen. And
mhm,
that's one of those things that I have, since reading this book, it gave me the language and kind of the understanding of this. It was, oh, I see this very clearly in people that have a more typical presentation of like one or the other, and you can see, oh, this really impacts all of their decisions.
mhm.
So,
And so, like, you could kind of see that in a lot of early childhood memories,
mhm.
but also in a lot of, because I've come from one of those families where the mother and the grandmothers were always cautioning about safety
Yeah.
and the world being a dangerous place and
Mhm.
all of the risks that you may come to. And so I'm one of those people with the kind of like more
Yeah.
cautious voice in the back of my head.
I think
And
I was that person
it's
up until
not
2
the
months ago.
worst. It's not the worst lesson in life to learn, because it is important to know how to protect yourself.
Mhm.
But then you get a client who maybe has really bad anxiety disorder, doesn't want to go out into the world. The mom who's scared to take her kids shopping, to go out to the grocery store, things like that. And then it's like, okay, you've learned this lesson. It's not a terrible lesson to want to be cautious and aware and protect yourself. So we're not going to completely throw it away. But is there any new meaning that you can add to it alongside of it? Of like, okay, maybe like the world is not always safe, but we can be prepared. But also, odds are, on the whole, things are going to be okay.
Yeah, and I also identify as one of these people. I think that was my predominant view most of my life, was that
Mhm.
things are particularly dangerous, relationships are dangerous. And it was fascinating to me of, I kind of had this, I don't know. I don't know what happened. Whatever happened 2 months ago that got me started doing this was 10 years prior to that. Was I have lots of ideas. I have lots of thoughts. I'm always watching these conversations going on, but I don't want to get out there because horrible things are going to happen to me. Like, obviously, people are going to attack me no matter what I think, no matter how like moderate I think that I am. I know how, no matter how open to other people's ideas I think I am, something bad is going to happen. And I kind of got the courage of like, hey, I'm just going to go do it. And it's been this fascinating thing is that you all of a sudden I see that the world changed, and it changed almost overnight for me. And it's one of these things that I was again so enamored by these ideas was I got to experience it. One of the things I like to do with any theory that I'm reading for therapy is always instantly apply it into my life as like intensely and maximally as I can to see if the ideas make sense or if they work. And this was one of the ideas is if I actually just tell myself I'm going to assume that this is going to work out well and behave in a manner in that way. Oh my god, it was unbelievable to me. It's like, oh, in 2 months, people that I was viewing from the outside looking in, of like, oh, these are all the cool people I want to talk to. All of a sudden, they're talking to me because I was willing to engage with them in a way that oh, in my head before, it's like if I say something, they're gonna poo-poo me. They're gonna say something negative about me. But it was like, no, let me just give it a shot. Who cares? It'll be all right. And it's fascinating just that, like, what energy you're bringing, what perception, what the things, that kind of prediction model that you're bringing to a relationship can radically alter kind of, life in a very quick matter of time.
Yeah, and that is what I have I think makes the Adlerian therapy so fun is that's the number one therapy intervention that you would use with a client is encouragement.
Mhm.
Is just like encouraging them to embrace the different task of life that they have. With the courage to be imperfect.
Mhm.
Like it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to go smooth every time. This is like the second podcast I've ever been on, and so I am just a little bit nervous
Fair.
about it, um, because this is not something I do on the regular.
Mhm.
But this is such a fun topic. I couldn't resist coming and talking about it.
Yeah, and it's the same. Like I partly, one of the things I hope to do through this is to also. I'm also nervous. I was nervous the whole day leading up to this, even though, like, in my head, I'm like, I know nothing's gonna happen. There's no
Mhm.
reason that this isn't gonna be enjoyable. The worst case scenario, we don't publish this. Like, there's like the risk of
Yeah,
something happening is almost zero. But part of it is like I want to just go through this, make some flubs. But the last podcast I recorded, I just completely lost my train of thought and was unable to gather it back. And I was like, you know what? I think I want to leave that into this because it happens to all of us. And often,
yeah.
very often in life, we see the polished version of like
Mhm.
someone doing like 30 different takes of something. And it's discouraging. Sometimes you're like, I'm not this perfect. And to be able to
Yeah.
have it, like, it's okay to mess up. It's okay to flub your words. It's okay to, lose your train of thought. It happens.
Yeah. And so from like the Adlerian perspective, um, that would be so Adler gets some criticism and gets some flack.
Hmm.
I think because there's a little bit of misunderstanding by what he meant by the drive. In Adler's view, we were all striving for superiority.
Hmm.
And that's in contrast to Freud, who it was sexual. And so one was psychosexual dynamics, and they were contemporaries and they were friends until they weren't friends. And
Hmm.
Freud actually tried to have Adler canceled, but
Oh, really? That's fascinating.
like, no, so like it was this whole thing. They ended up not liking each other at the
Okay.
end of their lives, even though they had been very like a part of the same society or whatever. And for Adler, it was the drive to superiority. And people get confused by that will to power piece. It's
Mhm.
not necessarily the like, oh, I must be superior over other people. It's like in general, most of us would like to be at least, if not better than, at least as good as others around us. And you kind of see that in children growing up in the sibling dynamics of like, I'm not necessarily seeking to be better than my brother or sister, but man, at least like to be as good as them and feel value so that I can feel like I'm a contributing member of this family.
Mhm.
And that is the start of life for all of us, because if we can feel like we can contribute to our families, then we can leave our family and go out and contribute to the world and broader society as we become of age. And Adler was very focused on like the number one thing you can do to treat mental distress or mental disorder is to go out and contribute something
Mhm.
to the world. And it was actually the lack of perceived ability to contribute to the world around you that caused psychological distress.
Mhm. And one of the things, and you can check me if I'm incorrect about this, but one of the things that I liked about Adler's ideas was that there was like a positive thing that you were aiming at. And I felt a lot of psychoanalysis. There's not like a right direction. It's so
Mhm.
open ended. There's no knowing anything. There's no right and wrong. There's kind of just almost exploration. And it's interesting. This gives the clinician more of a direction to be that, like, kind of gives you an idea of where you're headed. And sometimes you can feel very lost, I think, or I have felt lost in my career, not having a direction because someone may not, often not want to push towards these things we're talking about. They might want to get something satisfied, and that I can't satisfy their need. And is my goal to help them satisfy that need? Or is my goal to figure out, oh, maybe this is a mistaken, belief that this is what you actually need in life?
Yeah, and as far as Adler was concerned, the only things you really needed to work with people on was have they found meaningful work in life where they can contribute to society? Have they found a meaningful, intimate relationship, that connection? And then, so work, intimacy, and con contribution to the broader society. And that doesn't have to be the world, it can
Mhm.
be, but it can also be your church community, your town, your extended family, just what your state.
Mhm.
And so going out and like encouraging clients to less focus on themselves and more focus on paying it forward, contributing outward, and not in a like, oh, I'm going to be superior, better than everybody way, or I'm not in a like a negative, like, oh, I'm not good enough way. But uh, so I went through an Adlerian training program,
Okay.
postgraduate, and one of the things that the teacher said, this guy named Calvin Armourding, he's in South Carolina. His book is on the reading list. It's a
Okay.
pretty good one. Is that another definition for superiority is excellence.
Mm.
And then the question you ask the client is, what is the most excellent version of you? And then what does that person look like? And who could that person be? And whatever it is, pushing that client to the best possible version of themselves
I
is
love
like it is very much a goal-directed therapy
yeah,
on purpose.
and it's goal directed, which is great. And I think the other piece, like and he mentions this in the book, like the kind of critique of this idea of like the main focus being like a cooperation with others is like, well, what about the individual? And his argument, I think, is a sound one, which is, well, the best version of you is going to be the one that is cooperating with other people. Like that also includes the implications that you have to be the best version of you to be
Mhm.
able to cooperate effectively with other people.
Yeah. And so there is one little problem with the wording, though. It's not actually Adler's wording because everything he wrote was in German and
Yes.
has been translated. But this is the generally accepted translation of what he meant in English.
Mhm.
Um, and so if you'd like, I'd like to kind of share an example of how this
Yeah.
could look.
Okay.
Um, one of the things that Adlerians like to do is a lot of experiential practice on themselves and others. And so if
Great.
you join an Adlerian group, um, you may find yourself being the temporary client.
All right.
And so they really do. They get to, that's an Adlerian training. You go to it and you're going to practice the work.
I think that's great.
Um, and I think what we just talked about with the cooperation and the individual, like one of the reasons this has resonated with me so much is because it is so closely linked to my own early childhood memory. And so, and this is like an example of something that you could do in Adlerian therapy with a client. So Alfred Adler did think that the earlier childhood memories, the better, because it is the start of your self-narrative of who you are as a person. And so it's like page one in the book of yourself that you're writing about yourself, and you get to write the meaning that you have about yourself.
Mhm.
And so if you're sitting across from a client, you'll ask them, like, maybe you take a few minutes here to tell me your very first memory, your earliest childhood memory. It helps if they tell it in first person present tense. And so I'll share one of mine.
Okay.
I am 3 or 4 years old. I'm playing outside in front of our apartment where we live, and I'm playing with Alex, and he is my best friend, and we play together every day. And Alex's mom comes out of her apartment, and they live next door, and she brings Alex his snack. And it's something I've never seen before. But Alex, he turns to me and he offers me his snack. And so I take it and I taste it, and I absolutely hate it. It's disgusting. But I keep it to myself and I just say a polite thank you.
Mhm.
And that's the end of the memory.
Okay.
And so then as an Adlerian therapist, you would be like, okay, well, like for what is the most vivid moment of that memory? And for me, it's the taste of the pretzel.
Mm.
And I hate pretzels to this day. They're disgusting. I
Okay.
won't.
Oh, I love pretzels, but
Um,
okay. You're allowed to not like pretzels.
no, hate pretzels. Still will not eat one. Every time we get on a plane to go somewhere, my husband's like, "Look, you want this little pack of pretzels?" And I'm like, "No, absolutely not." Um, And then you ask maybe what was the person's, like, the emotion that they felt in that moment.
Mhm.
And so for me, I'm tasting this disgusting pretzel, and my first emotion memory that I have is fear.
Mm.
Because Alex is my friend. I like playing with Alex. I
Mhm.
want to continue being cooperative and getting to play with Alex every day. Um, but I'm growing up in a home where my mother has taught me to be very, very polite.
Okay.
And so for me, the opposite of fear would be, what would the opposite be? So then that's the other thing. You get the emotion that they experienced,
Okay.
and then you ask what the precise opposite would be. So in that moment, for me, the
Mhm.
opposite of that fear would be acceptance
Sure. Okay.
or cooperation.
Mhm.
And then you ask something along the lines of like, you know, Aesop's fables,
Sure. Mhm.
stories with a moral.
Yeah.
If that were an Aesop's fable, what would the moral be? And so the childhood version of that for me is, the moral of the story is, be polite to keep friends.
Mhm. Okay.
And so, like, that's a really interesting Adlerian memory, because it's like, okay, I'm playing with a friend. Um, it's an opposite gender friend. Um, so there's lots of things that, like, and there's a drive to cooperation, but there's
Mhm.
also
Mhm.
fear of unacceptance. But then there's the adult moral. So you give them time to go back and read. So the childhood moral is, be polite to earn friends.
Okay.
That is not a terrible lesson for anyone to learn,
Mhm.
because it's kind of true. Like, if you want to
Yeah.
get along in polite society, like, you do have to be polite. You
Mhm.
can't be rude. You can't be a jerk to everybody that you meet. But as an adult, are there times when that lesson is less than functional, is less than
Mhm.
cooperative? Or are there times when that lesson is damaging to you as an individual, like, or like a problem for you?
Mhm.
Like,
Because
where are the
you
dates
can
in that?
imagine very easily. It's like, oh, if someone is consistently bothering you, that message is, well, be polite to them. Like
Yeah,
even if I that relationship's important, I want to maintain it. Is politeness over anything else.
yeah.
Mhm.
And that's not always the most functional. That's
Mhm.
not always the best way to preserve a relationship. And it's
Mm.
not always it's not always mutually respectful. And so sometimes you might want to slightly not unlearn the lesson, not scrap it, because overall, not a bad lesson,
Mhm.
but just slightly moderate it to make it the most functional for you as an adult. And so what that might look like is, be polite to earn friends, but also know it's okay to stick up for what you think and what you believe, and you don't have to swallow every nasty pretzel
Mm.
that somebody tries to make
Yeah.
you eat. Um, and so that becomes the new lesson, and then take that and have the courage to live that out and become a much more functional person.
That's super interesting. So there's a part of me that wants to go, you want to do this on me?
You don't have to do it on your podcast. You could do it on yourself later.
Well, I mean, there's a part of me like I've been to a lot of therapy in my life. So like I'm pretty okay talking about most things of it's like a I think it's fascinating. I think it's an interesting. But one thing I wanted to mention, maybe just to help people understand, like why are these memories so important? At least in my understanding of of Adler, just saying that what we're doing with those old memories is not that they're continuing to influence, that we call upon them in certain moments of our life to maintain our style of life that we were talking about before. So it's like almost like a tool, as opposed to like deterministically this thing happened to you and there's nothing you could do about it. That we're
Mhm.
actually utilizing it very often without us like even realizing that we're using it, mistakenly, but at that moment for our own, our own benefit.
Yeah, and some of those mistaken um, is beliefs about a memory can come from like a shadow side drive of like, well, if I am the most polite person in the room, then that makes me morally superior.
Hmm.
And that's not always, that is not true. That is not always true.
Yeah.
And so, like, you can use even the best qualities about yourself for good or bad. And a lot of people may call on the best, or may call upon qualities about themselves for good or bad, and start playing competitive games. And then that's when people end up having problems in life and in work, in intimate relationships, and in broader society.
Mhm.
Is becomes the I'm going to be competitive with the rest of the world. I'm going to be competitive in my family. I'm going to be competitive in my marriage. Um, the overly polite person in a marriage can quickly become the passive aggressive person
Mhm.
in a
Mhm.
marriage if they're not self-aware of that. Um, and so that is how it can be like used or misused. And calling clients out on what they're doing and understanding why they're doing it
Mhm.
becomes really important, because maybe they're trying to use a facet of their personality in an inappropriate or self-undermining way that they don't even realize.
Well, and
That's where insight comes in.
I like these like this idea. It just made me think of like a more of like a. Oh, I want to be a little provocative. It's like a societal issue. So like, I think right
Yeah.
now we have in society, like you're describing, these like very positive, I think, traits about us. Something like empathy is a word that I hear all the time, and generally, having empathy for other people, pretty good. I have certainly, and I think probably most people watching this have seen empathy be used as a way to be above someone else. So I have empathy and you don't have empathy, and that makes me superior to you and above you. And essentially it's a competition who could be more self-effacing to someone else.
Mhm.
And it is interesting to see how these things, and they actually, in my opinion, becomes quite dangerous because now we've twisted this thing that can be healthy, and it makes it harder to kind of like attack or like talk about because it's like, well, wait, you're telling this person they shouldn't be empathetic, and it's like, no, 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 that's not. I'm saying their empathy isn't really a good thing. It's not a tool being used for good. It's actually a tool being used for harm, and like any of these other traits that we have.
And that is one thing that I think Adler would have like a lot of times in society and broader societal issues, what people are trying to use for the betterment of society is not always for the betterment of society. Sometimes it's for the betterment of yourself or your group or like whatever. And um, one of the more popular societal like superior, so that was his critique of like of
Mhm.
human nature, is like
Yeah.
trying to be superior and being competitive with the other, is one of those that is playing out in society right now. Might be the game of who's the biggest victim,
Hmm.
and who has the most grievances to share. um and it's not always the I'm better than you people who are trying to be superior. It can be the oh woe is me people who are
Yes.
secretly and subversively trying to be superior and tilt things in a competitive direction rather than a cooperative one.
And it's so tricky to discuss this because you get
Yeah.
it wrong and then you're doing something really cruel to someone that's genuinely a victim. Um,
Yeah.
and like they're not using it in this way, and you see this all the time where people will go swing that pendulum way too far on the other end, and it's like anyone that claims any kind of like suffering, shut up, you're just virtue signaling, et cetera, as opposed to, yes, these things can be used. And again, I like to try to use myself as an example. This is something that I absolutely have done in my life where I did a thing. I'll just say what I did, even though it's kind of embarrassing. But just to highlight this point, this is not like everyone. I think most people do things like this without even realizing that they're doing this. Is that you're feeling so hurt. I remember I was in an argument with my wife when we were engaged, and something happened. I was just so devastated by what was happening, and I started just kind of freaking out almost but I kind of knew what I was doing, and there was this piece of, if I act extremely hurt enough, this person will stop what they're doing and take back what they said. And as soon as I like clicked that I was doing that, there was this level of like revulsion. But it's this thing that I can understand how it is enticing. There's a power to it. It's like, I am so hurt. How could you possibly continue to hurt me if I demonstrate this level of emotional suffering or pain? So there's a real like, I think there's almost an allure to that, especially now that as a society we've given it even more power. I think the allure is even stronger.
Yeah. And that is difficult because individual psychology, people are nuanced,
Mhm.
and pain is real and suffering is real, and people actually do go through really traumatic things and make genuinely valid traumatic meanings of a trauma. Um, but then that also the Adlerian is like, well, you can choose to to keep that view. You can choose to continue to have that style of life, um, or you can change it. But the only one who can change it is you. And that can feel a little bit harsh. It
Horrible.
can
It's the
feel a little
worst.
bit tough because at some point telling somebody who's legitimately suffering,
Mhm.
like, that they're choosing their own pain can feel very harmful, even though, so like tact is a skill,
Yes.
a very hard skill
Absolutely.
um, to learn to help people like through their suffering because, that's telling somebody that their suffering is not real is not helpful. It's real, but you do get to choose what you do with it.
Yeah, and
That's
that
tough.
word choice is like, and again, I'm kind of pedantic with it. I think having like the right words to fit things is so helpful, and like
Yeah.
that it is. And this again, another thing I loved about his philosophy is that there's nothing like you're not out of control. Like you're making a bunch of decisions, moment
Hmm.
to moment, and you're making a decision, and it can feel very harsh. And especially like if you had the mindset like I did, I think earlier in my life, which was this isn't my fault. Someone else should fix this. And if someone says to you, "It's like, no, you're making decisions that are perpetuating your suffering," that is brutal to hear. But I was like, the big but is if you actually can like swallow that very bitter pill and accept it, wow, it's empowering. Is I don't have to wait for anyone. I don't need to wait for this person to come like save me or help me. I can actually do that myself. And I personally have found that to be like the most empowering message possible if you can get over that like initial hump of like this sucks to hear that.
Yeah. And that's that. There's an Adlerian phrase. You call it spitting in their soup.
I've been using it a lot recently. My friends
It
hate me because I've been spitting in their soup all the time.
Yeah, it's like you're doing this and this is why you're doing it and this is why, and when you like make it so unpalatable their behavior, they have that revulsion like you had about your own behavior,
Yep.
like, oh, this is revolting. I cannot possibly keep thinking, feeling, behaving this way because it's making me so miserable. And
Mhm.
then that does drive change.
Yeah, but
But it's
that's where that
very,
tact word comes in. You got to tactfully spit in soup.
yeah, which can sometimes be hard to do.
That's
So,
very, very much.
but
Yeah.
that's where I love the concept of a life task.
Mhm.
And so the Adlerian life task are meaningful work and meaningful intimate relationship. He meant in a marriage, um, and then society. And like you ask yourself, like, is this my task? And and then I like that because it narrows people into not on what happened to them, but like what part of it is their task to deal with. And
Yes.
so you're not focusing on the bad or what happened, but like, okay, a thing happened and now you have a task. And how are you going to address it? And ooh, I have a decontextualized therapy example.
Okay.
And so middle-aged male client, um, life has thrown him an unexpected curve. It's about to wreck his job, his family, and his standing in society through no fault of his own. This, like, this was not him. This was
Mhm.
not something he chose. This was not something he did. Um, but his whole life's about to get wrecked. Um, and the early childhood memory is the very first memory. It was so great. Decontextualize it a little bit. Um, there's childhood home wiped out through act of God, natural disaster, bad thing happens.
Okay.
And then in the memory, there is an animal of significance, and it's a very masculine creature, animal that, like, as the vivid part of the memory, the home is wiped out, but standing on the ruins is the spirit animal. I'm not going to say what it was, but very masculine animal. And then the family doesn't rebuild the home where it was, but what they build to replace it becomes critical and vital to this man's development.
Okay.
Okay. So it's like, so this childhood memory, everything gets wiped out. You've got this vivid, idealized image of a very masculine animal that's got some strengths and qualities and abilities. And then you have what was rebuilt on top of the ruins. And so that early childhood memory became this absolutely beautiful metaphor for this man's style of life
Hmm.
to help him work through this exogenous factor, this thing he couldn't have planned for, that's about to wipe out his life again a
Mhm.
second time. But in that was all of the things, all of the tools, and all of the skills that he needed to address what his task was going forward was contained in that memory.
Mm.
And he just had to pull from it and give it meaning to move forward.
That's very cool.
And it was such a great case. And that's just like the general decontextualized piece of it.
I
Like it
I
was
I
all.
I love the life task. It's an idea that I I'm not sure. I think you crossed paths with Jonathan Cogburn on Twitter, and so he introduced a family systems book to me, and this idea pairs very nicely with within family systems the overfunction or underfunction dynamic, and in a
Mhm,
relationship being able to really ask yourself like, is this my job right now or is this someone else's job? And like easy for me examples, oftentimes emotions can feel like someone else's emotions feels as if it is your job. It is
mhm.
not. Um, and so very often for people like me, I felt like I had to do something about someone else's emotions. And it was this very freeing thing throughout my life to realize, oh, I'm actually not responsible for that. I'm responsible for me and my reactions to those emotions, but I'm actually not responsible for altering or changing that. That's someone else's life task. And there's this feeling of like, I guess, kind of relief when you can just hand that back to someone. You're like, oh, I don't have to do this.
That has saved me
Yeah.
since becoming a mom and
Yeah.
having three children. And also during the time that I
Mhm.
became a mom, I also became responsible for taking care of sick elderly family members. So I'm one of these sandwich moms
Okay.
that's got small children to take care of and then like terminal and sick elderly family members to take care of. And so very much in a caretaker role. And that like, what is my task? And being able to answer that question for myself has absolutely saved me as a wife and a mom. Because I would have probably lost my mind if I could not clearly see the lane of what is my lane and how do I stay in it.
Yeah, and it is the parenting thing. It also I feel like it saved me as well because it was this idea in my head. I was like, I have to be on all the time, and I need to
Mhm,
be this thing. I need to. My job is to entertain my child. My job is to make sure that they are okay, and to be able to pull back and then just watch not only the stress off of me, but to then to allow that other person and to realize, oh, I may have actually been really detrimentally like impacting their development and their growth by taking their life tasks. So that's the way I describe to myself is like, I don't want to take someone else's job, as I'm now taking an opportunity for growth from them. And to actually be quite cautious about this, it really is this life changing thing. So if you're out there and you have kids, like all of a sudden it feels like we have to do everything for them. My advice is kids are actually amazing. They're extremely intelligent and they're extremely capable. If you can kind of model and encourage them to go do it, they can do a lot of the stuff that like you don't like doing. They will just do it for themselves. If you set up
yeah.
the scenario that allows them to do this.
Well, and that's one of the things from the Adler book is never do a task for a child that he can do for himself.
Hmm. Yep.
Um, and And so you see that that gets a little hard with the three kid dynamic because the oldest one is sitting there looking like, okay, mom, why does the baby get all of this? And it's like, well, the baby can't do this.
Hmm.
Like the baby cannot feed themselves. The baby cannot clothe themselves. You are old enough to go put on your shoes.
Yep.
And so and that becomes their life. And I'm kind of bad about it, like asking my shit, like, is this your task? Like, this is your
Mm.
well, and I'll let
Yeah.
my kids know, like, this is a mommy task. This is a daddy task.
Yep.
This is, hey kid, this is a kid task, and you got to be responsible for it. Um, because I don't want to raise pampered, spoiled.
Yeah, and it's like
And
it
so
is
I
it's
love it
yeah.
because it's kind and loving, but it's not this gentle parenting. It's like I'm going to love you and support you, but I'm going to prepare you for the world and you're going to be able to do the things you need to do.
Well, and I would argue that that is genuine kindness. My first
Yeah.
supervisor when I was in my master's program for social work told me, and her phrase I'll never forget is like boundaries equal love to children. And
Mm,
kind of what we're demonstrating through this is saying, hey, I trust you that you are capable and able to go do this, and I believe in you, and I'm gonna encourage you to go do this. And that sends, I think, a very powerful message to a kid as opposed to, oh, watch out, be careful, don't do this, don't do that. And again, it's what is the style of life that we're as parents, the little bit of control that we do have, what are we instilling into our children? An idea that, hey, you can go get it. I'm not even that worried about it. Like you'll take care of it in worst case scenario, we'll fix it. We got this. Or every 2 seconds, be cautious or don't do this. And let me take this away from you. And it does leave this idea in your head of like, oh, I guess if I just wait around long enough, or if I seem like I'm having trouble, oh, someone might do this for me. And I don't
yeah.
like you said, I don't want a child like that because when my 10-year-old son comes down, he's like, "Can you pour me a bowl of cereal at 6 in the morning?" I'm like, "No, this is your like you can pour a bowl of cereal." And but
Yeah.
it is so tempting as a parent to just go and do the thing because especially in the beginning when you're teaching your kids, it's more
Oh, it's
work. It's way more work.
so much more work. And I did have this like everything needs to be perfect, nothing can be messy. And just it was a it was a task of me to learn to
Mm,
accept a little bit of mess and accept a little bit of extra cleaning time. But my goodness, like what you can do when you give a child a task that they can be responsible for. Um, my own daughter, my oldest daughter, uh, I was probably too overprotective, too she's a COVID baby. She was
okay.
born okay, so she just turned 6.
Okay.
We were one of those families where like you have your baby in the COVID in the hospital alone and nobody can
Mm,
come and nobody can and it's like all that
yeah.
craziness. And first time mom wanting to do everything just right and being accident prone and overly anxious myself. I really feel terrible because I'm having to rewrite a lot of that with my own child because early on, I just fell into that pattern.
Mm,
And I hate that. But it happened. And so now we deal with the tasks that we have. And so she, like little brother and little sister have come along and has started to develop some clingy mom anxiety, which is totally normal, typical for a 6-year-old. And one of her things within the last 2 months, since she's finished kindergarten, is she wants to get out of the car first.
mm,
She's worried that everybody will get out of the car without her and she'll be in the car by herself.
okay.
Okay. So, and she was starting to get like really anxious and panicky about that because also she also has grandmothers who are constantly talking about how dangerous things are.
Mhm,
And you know what kids hear all the time right now, which is true and we need to be aware of, but also terrifies them is the whole kids getting locked in hot car stories.
mm.
So my child hears that,
Oh, okay.
my child observes it, my child makes meaning from it, and now my child is afraid because she's me made over, bless her heart. Um, so I know why she's thinking it. I know why she's doing it. And I said, here's how we're going to fix this. We're going to give her a new job. And it totally worked because now she is the kid that gets out of the car first, but she's the kid that gets the house key and goes and unlocks the door.
It's very
And
useful.
now that she is in charge of that, like we're not fighting over the whining over get me out first, get me, I want to be first. Because that's the an oldest kid thing too, right?
Mhm,
For gotta be first. I've always been first.
yeah,
Your first is now useful, your first is now contributing, and now you have this wonderful responsibility, and you're doing something for everybody in the family that we need. We need you to be able to go and unlock the door and let us all in the house.
mm,
And and that has kind of solved it. And and so we took the anxiety and we made it a task that she had the ability to handle and that she had the ability to resolve and do for herself.
And just
And
to feel that contribution to the family, because again, this like it's very helpful if the door's open when I'm carrying groceries in or like shuffling other children into the house.
so the because the other two, well, the middle one can walk now, but my son just turned 1,
Okay.
so yes, they're 6, 3, and 1. And so like that dynamic has just been so much fun. And
It's fun, and it is one of these things that I just it is so challenging. And an idea that I just had as you were talking about this is I think one of the reluctance that parents often have, and I think people often have, of like asking someone for help is kind of what we're doing. We're telling here our children is like, hey, I kind of need your help. You're a part of our family, and I would like you to contribute to us, and I want your help. And often, and I think myself included, often felt like I was burdening someone by asking for something. It was like, oh, here I'm dropping a task on someone. I should just take care of it myself. And what I often will talk about in therapy session is that could be true, but you also could be giving someone a gift. Is that I know about me is that when someone says like, "Hey Ryan, I'm struggling," or "Hey, can we have a conversation about something?" and I'm able to successfully be of assistance, there's like no better feeling in the world. Someone has just given me a gift to feel that I am useful and worthwhile to them, and we can give that to our kids, and they might not like it at first, but it is someone. It's like
no,
having faith that they will
well,
like they will get there and be like, oh, I have a job. I'm important. My dad needs me right now. That feels pretty powerful.
yeah, because we did not start unlocking the door perfectly right away.
Of
It
course
took some
not.
time, especially that sticky deadbolt,
Oh,
so it did not happen easily right away.
mhm. Yeah, and that's the again the tough thing, especially like you have 3 young kids. It is a lot of work to do what we're describing. It is easier to do it yourself. And so that's often I think the task that parents are having right now is that it's the gentle parenting thing. One, I think you can feel good about yourself if you're being nice, but also it's easier. Just to do things and like meet all of their needs because they're quiet when their needs are met. It's just kind of easier. But the real challenge is like, how do I help my child develop and grow? And again, I think it's like a parenting thing. Is my goal as a parent, and I don't know how you think about this, but is to help you develop so that you can successfully leave my home and live a successful adult life. As sad as that will make me feel, that is
Mhm.
really what I want, is that you'll be prepared when I'm no longer here.
Yeah, no, 100%. There's a site online. I forget what the exact, it's Adlerian Child Rearing
Mm,
Principles. And that is very much what they are. Like, this is not gentle parenting, but it is like preparing your child for the task of life. And that is the greatest gift that you can give to your child, is to prepare them to be able to be willing to work and contribute, and to prepare them to be the kind of cooperative person who can function well in an intimate relationship, and modeling that in your own family and modeling that in your own marriage. And then also modeling for them, this is how we contribute to our community. This is what we do in our town. This is what we do in our religious service. This is what we do with family and extended friends, and like just modeling appropriate life task.
so that word just is something that I think about a lot with parenting, and just the stuff that I see online that drives me a little crazy. You often like see stuff like what do you say to your child, or what like how do you get your child to do this? And I've come to this like you don't say anything, and I don't think you have to do anything. Well, I think what you have to do is model. I think you have to be responsible if you want your child to be responsible. You have to get off of your phone if you want your child to be off the devices. And that is the harder thing to do, is that I actually have to be the person I think I want my child to be. And often
Mhm.
as a parent, it's hard because again, there's just 1,000 things going on. And to be present and to be able to like kind of engage in the more modeling behavior rather than, again, I think the easier thing is just to be like, I want you to do this, and try to like use your words to demand someone to do something rather than I have to act like this all the time if I expect my child to do these things. They have to see me
Yeah.
do these things.
But also take the pressure off yourself, because Adler says it's their brother and sister that's going to affect
Mm,
it than you.
I like that.
And so,
Yeah.
and so as so for me, the main, especially right now, is just like, okay, how are we going to treat each other in this family?
Mm.
And that has become our conversation of like, um, it's very much in a little bit leaving kids to work out their own problems,
Oh yeah.
as long as they're not like gonna
Yeah.
severely injure each other. And And so the thing will be like, well, did you like what your sister did to you? And did you like how you responded to your sister? And is that the kind of relationship? Like, is that how you want to get along with her? Because, your brother and sister, they're going to be with, I tell this, and maybe it's, I don't know. I hope this doesn't backfire on me someday, but I tell them, like, y'all are going to have each other and be friends for forever because you're going to have each other longer than you have me and dad.
Mhm.
And so y'all better learn how to
That's a
figure it out and
I
get
get
along.
exactly the same message we tell to our kids. It's just like,
Yeah.
we're gonna be gone someday, and you guys have
Yeah.
each other, and that will be special and important, and it's worth this is why we make you guys kinda work out your stuff, and
Yeah.
we don't get involved.
Yeah.
So I had one there on this topic of parenting, there was another idea here that I wanted to make sure, 1, that I got right, but then 2, get your take on of that we shouldn't praise our children.
Yeah.
It's a pretty
Um,
I feel like that's a kind of like a radical in our current
it,
society, that's a pretty radical idea.
it is. And I'm kind of on the fence about it
Yeah,
because
I feel the same way.
it is so, and so I'm more nuanced. Like I'm not like black and white
Yeah.
on this. Because I have had someone in through like therapy share that some of the gentle parenting language where it was like that parents were told to be like, I'm proud for you, or be like like the less praising.
Mhm,
Um, Turns out this person never got actual praise, and maybe they needed and wanted a little bit of praise, and maybe it would have been
mhm,
warranted or justified.
yeah,
And so it's like, I'm not going to praise you for things that you should have done automatically. Like some things are just like, nobody is going to praise you for putting on your shoes once you know how to do it every time.
mhm,
And this is where those sibling dynamics get in, because like, so you're potty training a child, like you do want to be like, oh, congratulations, yes, you
mhm,
made it, that's wonderful. And then the older ones will be like, well, you don't praise me for going to the toilet. And then it's like, well, nobody praises mommy or daddy when we go to the potty.
mhm,
So then it becomes like you save the praise for like the occasional, like some effort, praise the effort.
mm,
Like, and you worked really, really hard doing a task that was maybe above what they would have been capable of, even if they do it in perfect, even if they didn't do it perfect, praise the effort. Um, but also make it like you should be proud of yourself.
mm,
And versus like, oh, you're so wonderful, you're so amazing. Like there's a tactful way to praise someone, or
mhm,
to, rather than praise, show appreciation.
I like that. Yeah,
And so, because my husband and I will do this for each other, like as we help each other out doing whatever task, um, we'll be like, oh, hey, thanks. Because that's a good thing to have in a relationship, in a
mhm,
marriage. Like, oh, like, hey, I noticed that you did this for me, and it was something I didn't even ask or even
mhm,
realize, but like, hey, that was really sweet of you.
mhm.
Thank you. And so our kids see that, our kids hear that, and then that is becomes appreciation rather than praise.
Yeah,
And
and
so how to like appreciate my kids for something that they do for me, um, or behavior that I want to see in an appreciative way. Like, I was getting ready for work this morning, and my little girl comes in and she just like gives me a big old like hug, and she's being really sweet. And I tell her, oh, like, thank you for being so sweet to mommy. Like, you are so kind to me. And that means a lot to me. And so praising her for things like that, rather than like, oh, you are so wonderful, you made 100, or this
yeah, there's something there's
tiny.
a real difference between what you're describing as appreciation and what I hear as praise, is like, the good jobs, and something that I saw my daughter is 7,
Mm-hmm.
and I can already see the constant desire for praise. So like she'll say or do something, and immediately her eyes go to my eyes. And
Oh,
I'm like, "Oh, you're looking for something." Um,
mm-hmm.
and it's fascinating because, I think the concern that Adler has is that if you overly praise your children, that is the only thing that they will work for. And so that
Yeah,
when, I do like school, you'll get a lot of praise if you do well. But once you leave school and go into the workplace, as you described, like no one's praising you for showing up to work on time and doing your
yeah,
job. And then you watch people struggle because, wait, this thing that I was like so reliant on to give me motivation, I'm not getting in the same way. And now I don't know where I stand. I don't know what's going on. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to be doing because the same signal that you're doing the right thing and things are working out is absent. And so I think that's the worry here of just, I love the idea of just appreciating it. Just like, it's just in it, I always think it has to be so genuine. I always hate like the very, like the, oh, like good job on the art when the art's not great. It's like, if I
Yes.
like it, I'll genuinely, that, I want to
Mhm.
genuinely say, oh, that's really cool. But to, have genuine appreciation for your kids, they don't need that much praise. I think maybe is the takeaway from this. They don't need that
Yeah.
much. They need
Oh,
some for sure. You need to hear a
yeah.
good word every once in a while, but not too much.
Yeah, it's so because I have seen it done the other way where they get told all the time how wonderful and amazing they are. And honestly, that creates like so much pressure for children and so much like of like, oh, like, am I pleasing you?
Yeah.
And it's like I don't want them to be so well trained like they feel like they're pleasing me all the time. That's not really healthy, but I think in if we're going to model appropriate life tasks, it's in our family, we're going to appreciate each other and the things that we do for each other. And that can be healthier than leaping on praise for performance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's often, again, if you, it goes back to this life tasking. Often, I think parents get in that praise trap almost because, oh, my kid, I want them to feel good. And again, it's
Mhm.
like that's not my job. My job isn't to have my child have a certain set of emotions all the time. It's actually okay that they feel bored or sad or maybe even disappointed in their
Mhm.
efforts at some point.
Yeah. When my kids tell me they're bored, I said, "Oh, that's such a wonderful thing." Like, great. I'm glad to hear it.
I think
How
my
are you going to
sarcastic
handle that?
is that sounds like a
What are
you
you,
problem.
yeah. Like,
Okay.
what are you gonna do with it?
Yeah, what are you gonna do about it? Like it's
Yeah.
not
Of
gonna be me.
course, then they end up doing really feral things with the board, and I'm like, "Oh, what have I invited into my house?"
Oh, it's like, well, they're gonna figure out how to get your attention. It's like, all right, I asked, and now I'm
Yeah.
going to be loud or
Yes.
yeah, it is a trip to parent. And one of the things I love about my job, again, as I said in the beginning, is like getting to watch these things. It gives you a very different appreciation for some of this kind of more like abstract theory stuff that we're talking about today. When you put them in your own life and apply them to your own children, and it's something I think about as a clinician, and I really I'm big on clinicians doing their own therapy, and this is a kind of adjacent example to this of like use the product that you're selling. So if you believe in a theory, apply it to yourself. See if it makes sense. See if you can utilize it to improve your own life, and if it's a great way to find gaps. At least for me, I found gaps in theories. I'm like, this doesn't work. It doesn't mean it doesn't work for everyone. It means it might not work for me. And that also means maybe I'm not the clinician to deliver that intervention. There may be another clinician that's intervention because of who they are and they understand it and they can like make sense out of it. I have a My take is all this stuff's kind of the same. Even like the split between Adler and like Freud, a lot of this
Yeah.
stuff is you can
It
like you
is.
can kind of it kind of go works together in certain
And
weird
so
ways.
well, and I'm not like a hardcore Adlerian. I didn't even like set out to be an Adlerian. So here's how this happened
Okay.
for me. Um, Left grad school, was a school counselor for a long time. That was great. I loved that job. I was really great. I felt like I was really great at that job. I got a lot of like, oh, you're really great at this job.
Okay.
And so like I did get like that boost of like people are like, oh, like you're a school counselor who's actually doing what we've been needing or wanting. Um, and then I stopped being a school counselor and I opened a private practice.
Mm.
And I'm solo, I'm by myself. I don't
Okay.
even work full time because I'm taking care of kids. And I realized that I had some skill deficits
Whew.
in
Okay.
theory from my graduate program. I was like, I don't know enough about anything yet to really do this job very well. And so I felt lost. I felt like I was floundering. And I was like, okay, I've just got to pick something. Doesn't matter what it is. I don't care what it is. I'm going to pick one thing and I'm going to learn it really, really well. And like if it sticks and works, that's great. And if it doesn't, I'll move on to the next
Mhm.
thing. And there just happened to be this postgraduate, like year-long cohort training program that some other counselors here in South Carolina were offering at the time. And I was like, that's it. I'm going to join their cohort. I'm going to join their program.
Okay.
I'll do it for a year and I'm going to learn. I knew nothing about Adler, nothing at all.
Just
And I was like,
blindly going in.
yeah, I was like, I'm just going to do it. I'm
Love
going to
it.
learn it as well as I can. And then that will be something that I can use.
Mhm.
Oh, and it was an interesting experience.
Oh yeah.
I have a lot to like, it was interesting, in a lot of different ways. But the good takeaway from it was I actually learned a lot about this theory, and it has been incredibly useful to me in my own personal life and in my practice. And so, like, I accomplished the goal of what I set out to
Mhm,
do. I learned something, I learned it really well. I've been able to, like, maybe not master it, but I feel like I've got a pretty decent handle on this
mhm.
now and I can use it. And that has been really good.
That's such a your trajectory
And
is
that's
almost
why I do like the Adlerian thing because it is simple in a lot of ways, which is a critique, but I think simple in therapy is good. Because I think sometimes we make therapy way too complex, and it's therapists are out there practicing models that are way too complex that they don't really understand and they're not doing it well. Learn something simple well, and then go do a good job at something simple. And Adlerian is that. And
I love that for so many reasons. So what my trajectory was very similar to yours. I worked in schools for about 10 years before going to
yeah,
private practice. And I had that same moment of like, oh, I knew how to do that. I don't know how to do this.
yes.
And it started my journey of just reading, like
Mhm.
heavily trying to get involved in consultation, similar types of things of, oh,
Yeah.
there's a skill that I'm lacking. And I totally agree with you on the part of being simple. I I think simple is preferable in almost every area of our life if we can make things simple and concise for people. Some of the theory
Yeah.
that I read of like in the more Freudian psychoanalytic side, I like, but it gets confusing, like really confusing. And for a client, not that you're even as in that role, you're not going to be explaining the theory, but even some of the ideas that you do need your clients to understand, the basic ideas of what we're talking about, can be really abstract. And my whole thing is, I view all of these like you. I'm not like I know I'm not going to become like a hardcore Alfred Adler guy. I,
Yeah.
I I view all of these as different tools that work for different people, but then they're all very similar. So you just need a grab. To me, it's like a grab bag of different metaphors, and depending on who you're working with, someone that's a bit more like I think artistic and maybe poetic probably likes analysis in those because
Mhm.
there's a lot of like deep, intense poetry. I don't like that stuff. I don't understand it. I have a very hard time reading poetry and that more complex stuff. So Adler was like, oh, here's all the things I was seeing, and someone just finally wrote it in words that I could like click and it all connected in a way. And I find that so helpful just to have like spitting in your soup. I've been yapping to all my friends about this idea. They all get it instantly because it's such a simple but understandable and relatable term. And I think there's so much utility and simplicity that, yeah, we need very smart, intelligent, like the scientists going deep into subjects, and there's a room and place for that. But the average counseling office, I don't think that's the right place for it.
No, because clients need things that are practical.
Yeah.
And that's what, well, and I needed something
I
that
was
was,
saying clinician. I think most
I needed
clinicians need it. Yeah.
practical of like because I see lots of teenagers, lots of young
Yeah.
adults. Um, I will only see children in conjunction with their parents now
Oh,
because
me
you
too.
cannot, yeah, I won't do it. I was
I,
like, this is not helpful at all to just see children. And having my own small children, I was like, I'm burned out on this. Um, but teenagers and young adults really benefit from this kind of practical model because they're all still formulating like, what are my life tasks? What work am I going to find? What relationship am I going to end up in? What can I do to contribute to the broader world around me? And so many, like in the young adult age group right now, are struggling with all of those things. And
mhm,
so it's so beautiful, it's so simple, it's so practical that it makes for, and like the interventions, like the early childhood, like that pattern where you do the memory
mhm,
and then you pull out the feeling and then you ask the moral and then you can either keep the moral or rewrite the moral. You can do that for all five windows. You can do that for dreams, you can do that for daydreams, you can do that for the exogenous factor, things that happen that you did not expect. Um, you can do it for even like what happened to you this week,
Mhm.
like that pattern, like that's the therapy technique. You use it and it works, and it's so nice. And um, so I like the utility of it.
Yeah, I can already tell in the last month my sessions are different because
Yeah.
I now have access to a different language that I didn't have. Where it's like I knew I needed to go somewhere, but if you don't have the words for it, and
Mhm.
like you, I felt when I left grad school that I was totally unprepared to do
Yeah.
the job of a psychotherapist. So I'm a social worker by trade, and I only went into social work school because I hated school, and I knew I wanted to be a therapist since I was a child. It's the only job I've ever wanted, which
Oh,
is
wow.
as where we could go into my first memory. It would be a very illuminating about this, but um, it's the only job I've ever wanted. So I hated school, and I was like, oh, I could just get a 2-year degree and go do the job that I wanted to do. But and
Mm,
I've since learned that social workers, I believe, are doing around 60 to 70% of the psychotherapy in this country, and I got my degree. I think it was in 2010. So some things have changed, and I don't know if for the better. Probably, I don't think they have necessarily. And but my issue is it is often such a broad degree that you're not trained to be a psychotherapist. You're trained to be a psychotherapist for like this much of the time, and then here's 14 other jobs we're going to stack into a 2-year degree, and you're never going to really know anything to the level of what I think you need to know is like, how do I actually work with a person? I can kind of
yeah.
like get the 101 theory in my head, but like when I have this person sitting in front of me, like what do I do? And I remember struggling. I always tell my supervisor it took me 6.5 years before I ever felt like I kind of understood what I was doing with anyone. And it takes a really long time to of both practice and get experience, and then how do I figure out how to get the practice and experience to like mesh up with the stuff that I'm reading. And it is really challenging, and I often feel like a lot of clinicians don't have the tools necessary to like feel confident and like good about what they're doing. There is so much uncertainty and anxiety of going into your first your first couple of sessions.
Yeah. So, and that's how I felt because I did a 3-year graduate program at the University of South Carolina, and it was a combined school counseling and therapy track, but it was way heavier on the school counseling.
Okay.
And so it was just like you're going to be a school counselor, but also you could go take the NCE and be a like a licensed
Okay.
professional counselor if you want to. And so like that was like an if I wanted to later I could do it. I went ahead, took the NCE when I graduated, but then I was a school counselor for 6 years.
Hmm.
And well, and on my first day as a school counselor, that's what one of the other reading interventionists that I used to work with is like, it takes you about 6 years to become competent and proficient working in the school system. And I had just gotten really good when COVID hit and I had a baby and I was like, okay, I'm going to quit that and do something different. And so now I'm coming up on my 6th year
Okay.
as a therapist because I kind of double dipped and did them both at the same time for a while.
Hmm.
And so now I'm coming up on my 6th year in private practice or working as a psychotherapist. And like I just now am starting to feel like I'm getting the hang of it. Um,
Well, and it's so interesting that the school systems and the licensing process don't account for the amount of time, and like they try to. I think they try
yeah,
to. Like for my license, like you needed to get your advanced licensure. I think you needed 3,000 face-to-face client hours, 100 hours of supervision.
yeah,
And I get it. Like there's only so much a licensing board to do. There's issues with the licensing board. I don't even know if this is the best way to do these things, but the message
yeah,
it sends to you is, oh, I did my hours. I got my my advanced little special C at the end of my license, and you're good to go. Like,
yeah.
and you are fully equipped. And if you talk to like clinicians that are probably 20 years 30 years older than you and I that have been doing this entire life, they're
Mhm.
like, it's an ongoing process, and they still feel like they are learning and have a ton to learn because this field is just massive and people are
Yeah.
highly complex. And every person that walks into my door, I'm like, oh, here's a totally new problem that
Hmm.
maybe everything that I've done prior to this is totally irrelevant. I have to start
Yep.
over from zero.
Well, and that's the great thing about Adler is it's the individual
Yeah.
psychology. And so like that's the focus every time somebody comes the door is like there is no other unique individual like this on planet Earth. Like that's another criticism. At people are like, well, you can't replicate it. You can't study it. There's no good research
Mm.
as far as like how these techniques work out. Well, because your sample size is one. Your sample size is the individual sitting in front of you, and the whole focus of it is on how do I understand this one person who is now in front of me, and there is nobody else on this planet that is quite like them.
And so that critique in my head goes, "Isn't that true for every other study on therapy?" I'm a big, I would say
Yeah,
I'm somewhat
yeah.
skeptical of studies on therapy, and I think for good reason of
Well, that's
what
why they could be replicated.
well, it's like, what are we studying? Like, there's so many variables you just cannot control for, and it's unfortunate. I think probably all of us in the field wish there was like a very clearly best studied best practice that we could all just learn and do, rather than the kind of wild west that we're currently finding ourselves in. Where like there's 1,000 different things you can choose. Each one of these schools kind of hates each other in certain ways and is going to crap on each other. Doesn't see the connections between each other. And yeah, you got to choose a couple of those. And we're not going to tell you which ones. It would be really nice, but I think so much of our problem in our field is like and this is my belief. I don't think we know what we're doing a lot of the time. It's like we're doing our best to show up, and there's some basic ideas of what we're doing, but I always like to tell the public a lot of what we're doing is like the best what seems the best in that moment based on my previous training. And sometimes I'm like throwing shit at the wall and seeing what sticks.
And
And that's a part of the process.
that's why it's called a
Yeah,
practice.
yeah. I like
Because
that.
that's, I mean, that's literally what you're doing
Yeah.
is you're practicing. And that doesn't always sound so good for people because sometimes people really, really want definitive answers. But a lot of times in life, there aren't like perfectly definitive answers that are going to fit everybody. I mean, now objective reality is real.
I agree.
There are some things that are like, okay, this is what it is. Um, but it's still going to be individualized for each unique person. Like, and
Yeah,
so
I wish our field just did a little bit better of a job describing exactly what you said. Like we are engaged in a practice. There's often such a certainty of like expertise, whether it is a diagnosis, a treatment, a medication. And I get it, like you have to market and that's a part of it. You got to play the game a little bit. But I think the public's perception is that we are way more capable than we are.
yeah,
And it's like I'm trying to always tell everyone like I'm very limited in the scope of what I can do. Like really all I can do is the person that's sitting in front of me is listen to them and tell them what I hear. Like that's kind of it. And they can take it and leave it. We can work with that together, but I can't fix your spouse. I can't go back and change your history. I can't change societal forces upon you. I can just try to see how you deal with them and then ask you if that's working and see if you want to try to figure out together like a different way of doing this. But that doesn't sound as sexy as some of the 3 acronym things and the fancy sounding modalities and treatment interventions.
yeah. People want like a magic wand or an easy fix. And I'm not here to be a guru. I'm just
Mhm,
here to learn about people because I think people are interesting and then I can maybe tell them the way I think that they're behaving interesting and they can
mhm.
decide interesting thing they'd like to do with it.
Yeah, and they can decide if my interesting thing's actually not that interesting and I was wrong.
Yeah.
It's one of the things
Oh,
I think
that's
often about, like, we get a lot of criticism, like, we're telling people they have to believe our interpretations, and I'm like,
no.
every clinician I've ever worked with is like, "Hey, I'm gonna say this thing, I don't know if this is true, but what do you think about this?" Like
Yeah. So that's one of my like favorite phrases in the language that I picked up from this group was asking the person like you're going to give them an assessment of what you think is probably going on.
mhm,
But instead of being like, this is what I think is going on, say, is it possible that what is happening is this? And
mm,
then you tell them what you think might be happening, and like, or is this a possibility? What do you think? And then that gives them the opportunity to correct any misunderstandings that I have. Because I tell people all the time, like, I'm going to maybe make some assumptions from time to time, and there is a good chance that I am wrong.
mhm. Oh, yeah.
And I am wrong a lot. But the wonderful thing about me being wrong is you have the opportunity as the client to correct me when I'm wrong.
Mhm.
And that gives us way more information than if you just go along with whatever mistaken assumption I may have.
Yeah.
And so I tell people all the time, like, if I please correct me,
Mhm.
like I want to know where my mistaken assumptions are.
Well,
And
it just leads you down the right track. It's like they just correct you, and you're like, "Oh, okay," and you just kinda go running with that.
it
It's like that was kind of the intervention was them telling me
was.
I'm wrong, and that's great.
Mhm.
Okay, like, fine by
Yes,
me.
yes.
I'm gonna steal this possible is that possible?
Like, is it
Again,
possible that what is happening is
this is one of those things that I've tried to, like, collect on my journey of trying to be competent is, like, you need little phrases like this, and, like, words really do matter, and I hear this, and I'm like, wow, you're not asking them if this is true. You're just trying to get them to even entertain the idea that their original belief might be mistaken. And like just getting them to be able to play with or entertain a different idea, it opens that little crack where a lot of people can't even I can't even entertain this idea and I'm going to reject it. And that's such a great phrasing of like, hey, is it
yeah,
possible? Not that it's true, but is it even possible that like there's a tinge of what I'm saying happening?
yeah. And then and sometimes that correction is like, "Well, this part is right, but this
Hmm.
part is wrong." And I love it when patients or therapists
Yeah.
or clients will tell me, "No, you have it totally wrong." Um, I actually like it when I'm wrong.
Yeah. I've
I
actually,
like it when I'm wrong about people.
I've had clients be like, "Why are you smiling when, like, I'm telling you that you were wrong?" I'm like,
Yeah,
Because now we're both right. Like,
yeah,
we're now, like, both on the same page, and, like, you just helped me, so thank you." Like, appreciate it.
yeah, and that has always worked out really nicely for me.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
you know, you gotta have this is a tough job to be able to just be
yeah,
very comfortable being wrong a lot, and I think that's a
yeah.
tough part of this
Well,
job is, like, this uncertainty that we're
you
always
have to
dealing
have
with.
the courage to be imperfect.
There you go.
It's not gonna go perfect. It almost never does. Were there any other, like, concepts out of the book that you just really, really wanted to talk about?
Alright, well, one more. I have for a long time, I've read a lot of like more psychodynamic psychoanalysis stuff, and I have just never understood dreams. So like I said, I don't understand poetry and artistic stuff like that. I really have a hard time with it. That was always how it was interpreted was through these almost like poetic, and you're reading deeper
Mm,
meanings into it. And Adler's idea of no, the reason that we actually forget our dreams or they're confusing is because that's not the purpose. The purpose is the residual feeling you were
yeah.
left with in that morning. I was like, oh, that makes so much sense. Why is this first time I'm hearing of this? Because like this all of a sudden it makes total sense. Kind of what is happening. At least to me.
Sometimes a dream is just a sometimes a dream is just a dream.
Sure.
Like, interpreting dreams can kinda get a little weird. Like, really, really weird.
Yeah.
But I love working with dreams, and the model that we talked about when I did the early childhood memory is the model that works on a dream.
Mhm.
And so and it's the dreams that you do remember, according to Adler, that are actually important because, like, if you remember it, it doesn't matter what it is. If you remember it, it's important
Mm.
because if it wasn't, you
W-
wouldn't remember it. So, like, if it's a memory for a reason. Even if it's like totally mundane and it's there for some kind of purpose. And so the dreams are the same way. And so some people, and these are the ones I like to work with the most, are the recurring childhood
Okay.
dreams. So I don't know. I'm one of these people that had recurring childhood dreams that I've still to this day vividly remember.
Like when you were a kid.
Yes.
Oh,
So
so this might be more fun. Do you want to do one with my dream? It's not like
do you have a recurring
yeah, I
childhood
remember
dream?
one from a kid. Yeah.
Oh, great. Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So it was like almost like I was in I was playing
Oh,
like and then
I'm
oh sorry
sorry.
yeah
I don't mean to stop you,
no
but
please
one of the things that makes this helpful is if you retell it in first person present tense
okay
as if it's happening in this moment.
happening in this moment okay
Yeah.
all right um I am in a world that looks like a regular Nintendo Mario world, and I'm walking along, strolling along, like going along the level. And in the stream, as I'm walking along, I'm kind of getting deeper and deeper into the level, and I'm progressing. And at the very end, there's a large, like comically, like the comic version of a bomb with like the lighting fuse. And as that fuse goes down and explodes, I wake up horrified. And I had that dream repetitively as a child.
Okay. And so I'm going to kind of retell it, summarize it to
Okay.
you. correct me if I have any like mistaken understandings.
Mhm.
And so you have this recurring childhood dream where you're going through like a Super Mario world. You come to the end of it, and there's this exploding bomb, and you you land on it, it explodes, and you wake up, or you just wake up.
I think if my memory is I wake up right before it would explode.
Okay, so right before the bomb explodes, you wake up.
Mhm.
And what is the most vivid part of that dream for you?
Seeing the bomb, like the like that like
Seeing
the comet, it's like
bomb.
the black circle with like the
Okay.
fuse coming out of the
Yeah,
top.
you
Yeah.
can see it right now.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
I close my eyes.
as you see it right now, what is the feeling or emotion that that brings up for you as you see that most vivid moment?
Anxiety and fear.
Anxiety and fear.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't care about the dictionary or the thesaurus. For you in that moment, what is the precise opposite of anxiety and fear?
The word that popped in my head was security.
Security. And so you have anxiety and fear on one side and security on the other. Okay. So pretend your dream's an Aesop's fable. And this is a story that you tell to your children.
Mhm.
And on one side is anxiety and fear, and on the other side is security. Like, what's the moral of that story?
Hmm. I can tell you the first thing that pops into my head is that um, going too deep is dangerous.
Ooh, going too deep is dangerous. Okay. So is that your current like understanding of it, or do you think that is maybe the child version of Ryan? Like, what would his moral of the story
I
be?
think the child version is things can explode at any moment unexpectedly.
Oh, okay. So you've rewritten it in your adulthood.
I guess so.
Oh, so that becomes so you got the child moral on one, like things can happen
Mhm.
unexpectedly. The
Yeah.
world is unpredictable.
Mhm.
But your more adult version is going too deep is dangerous. Okay. So that in what part of your life are you acting that out? Like going too deep is dangerous.
Well,
Like,
in one, it plays in a lot of different areas of my life. It is what kind of stopped me from doing this earlier was
mhm,
that I like delving into deep, taboo, interesting ideas. And my perception of the world, let's say the last 15 years, is very dangerous to be open to dangerous ideas or, quote unquote, dangerous ideas or
yeah.
things that are outside of the Overton window. And to me, that is what fascinates me about humans. Like
Mhm,
the extremes of humans, the kind of darker sides I find to be fascinating. But I also perceived my like almost like childlike curiosity about this. So I usually bring a lot of like happy energy to even like very disturbing topics. Um,
mhm.
People are gonna get mad. It's like, wait, why are you always so like jazzed to talk about this like very dark thing?
That's how you ended up being a therapist.
Yeah, maybe.
Um, so that's interesting. So going too deep is dangerous. Well, okay. Either that's a moral you want to keep, or that's a moral that maybe you've already started addressing in your own life, like the way you said, like, so going too deep is dangerous, but does danger always have to be, and this is going to sound a little crazy, but
Mhm.
does danger always have to be a bad thing?
No. I think what I as I think I hope to feel like I have learned a little of my mistake beliefs that danger is kind of fun.
Yeah.
I've learned that I get a thrill out of like, I wonder what would happen if I said this a little provocatively.
Hmm.
And I'm not gonna change what I actually mean, but like I could tone this down or I could see
Yeah.
what happens. And it's actually kind of exciting to feel the rush, the thrill of doing something a little bit risky.
Hmm. Like, and so, and then like if we're working together, like as a
Mhm,
client, it would be in all of these areas of life task.
mhm.
How does this moral of your dream, how could it play out for good or for bad? And so, like in your work, going too deep is dangerous. It's totally risky to start a podcast, but not all danger is bad. Some danger is exciting.
Mhm.
Some danger pushes you to do something that is better than you would have otherwise done.
Yeah.
Um, in your marriage, going too deep can be dangerous, but oh my goodness, what kind of things can you reap if you have the kind of relationship where you can go there with your spouse and really, really get to know each other on that really deep and scary level that's really hard for a lot of people
Mhm.
to ever meet?
It
And what kind of rewards might come along with that? And then, like, the broader society. And so, like, you reorient the
Mhm.
client to each of the life tasks, and then, like, in the broader society, in your community, in your town, in your practice, how could going too deep be dangerous? Play and so, I mean, it's not a terrible lesson, because maybe you also, like, we don't want to throw caution to the wind,
Sure.
because sometimes danger is real, and
Mhm.
like, you have to be aware and prepared for that. But at the same time, well, does danger always have to be a bad thing?
Yeah, and I know for me, it was I was clearly mistaken in the amount of danger that I was perceiving possible
Mhm.
by just, it's something as simple as like, "Hey, I'm in the community and I'm a therapist," and I often I'm like, "God, no one's gonna wanna hear all my stuff about people," but then, it's like, "Oh, everyone's interested in psychology because we all have psychologies and we're talking about people all the time." Actually,
Yeah.
my kind of, like, nerding out on psychology, oh, people like that. That's not
Mhm.
actually dangerous. I wasn't gonna be like, "Oh, this guy's gonna, like, analyzing us and, like, doing all this weird stuff." It was, "Oh, this wasn't dangerous." There was actually a space for this. And now you can be cautious. I'm not going to go and talk about like really strange things, but like that you can start opening up the window. And that has also been kind of this process that I have tried to, use some of this stuff is that I'm trying to do like little mini experiments to see like, oh, like what actually happens. And I often use that language. I think I got that from acceptance and commitment therapy of like trying to run experiments in your life to like, and you're essentially
Mhm.
challenging, I think, our, this style of life and like, how accurate is this prediction model that I have about life? And does it need some updating now that I'm 39 years old as opposed to when I first, got this thing?
Yeah, 'cause sometimes danger is exciting, and sometimes there's a lot of growth
Yeah.
can happen if you have the courage to face what you think might be dangerous.
Yeah. So, well,
Yeah. So that's awesome.
yeah,
What a great dream.
yeah, this was awesome. Thank you. First of all, thank you so much for just sending me all these resources, getting me
Well,
into this,
I have
entertaining
loved
all
it.
of my nerding out. Like,
Yes. There's not a whole lot of people that you can talk Adler with.
yeah, I've learned this.
It's a small world.
It, it's a small world, but it's also his ideas of. I've realized, the more is like his ideas really got adopted. They're just he doesn't get credit for them.
Yeah,
I
that's
think a lot of
true.
people talk about Adler and they don't realize that they're talking about Adler.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that
So,
happens quite a bit.
well, again, I appreciate so much. Is
Thank
there anything
you.
that you want to like plug or anything that you have going on or?
Oh, no, I'm just keeping my head down in Gaffney and being a mom, and I'm really therapy is more of my hobby than a career.
Okay.
It's more of what I just do for fun right now. I'm not very seeing very many people, or um so no, I don't have any
All right.
exciting plugs. I'm just
Well,
me down here in South Carolina.
well, I'm with Adler when this, and there's a page that I sent to my wife where I think as society we need to bring the status of motherhood a lot higher in the chain of value within society. So like, I think of this as that
Yeah.
is like what a job to be able to do and to do well. There may be nothing more important than that.
Yeah. And so, well, and see, that makes me feel good, because that's where I get like the meaning and
Yeah.
and all, like, the purpose and so trying to do a good job. It's a lot harder than I thought it would be.
It's a lot harder. God, it just the highs are higher and the lows are lower, and it just and my wife
Yeah.
and I always have to say like it just never ends. Like there's no, it just never ends.
Oh, but someday it
And
does.
well, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yep,
And
good and
so
bad. Well, thank you again for coming on.
thanks, Ryan.
Yeah, it was a pleasure, and hopefully we'll talk soon.
Anytime.
All right,
Have a good one.
you too.